right, the Krueg Show. We're back. Look at that. The Georgia Dome in the background. That's the site. Sunday, Niners, Falcons, Week 6 of the NFL. And your first place, 3-2 49ers, roll into the Mercedes-Benz Dome or whatever that is. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there it is in Atlanta. And today, rolling in our own Mercedes-Benz, Vish Kumaran. I'm making you a Benz. I don't know if you want to be a Benz, but
I'll take a Benz. That's a luxury vehicle. That's a compliment to me for sure. Yes.
Exactly. You're our Benz. Good to see you, bro. How are you, man? It's been a while. It's been a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you, Larry? I've been, getting back. We've been talking. We've been in touch, but we haven't been doing a show together in a little while. I'm really happy to be on with you again. I've been kind of going through the kinks of my own attempt at content creation, and it's had its ups and downs. I definitely maybe have a lot to improve there on my end. Definitely rewatching my shows the last couple of days. There's a lot I need to get better at, but I'm excited to go through it. And honestly, over the last 2 weeks, I just missed having these conversations because you always make me think about football, and I like talking to anybody that makes me think about football.
Well, that's awesome, dude. And we're going to be doing a regular hit on I don't know exactly what day and how we're going to do it exactly, but it's coming, folks. It's coming.
It's coming.
A regular Krueg and Vish Niner breakdown. Well, let's get right into it. 49ers go into the last game. They got the bounce back game against the Rams. And then they were going on the road against Carolina, and Carolina, it was Matt Rule, the Sharks were coming for him. And yet when you look closely at the matchup, you thought, well, yeah, this is still a really good Panther defense. And there's Christian McCaffrey there, and there's some nice offensive weapons. And Baker's bad, but they got DJ Moore and they got some other guys, and they do some good things. But the 49ers beat them up pretty good. What'd you think of the performance?
It was what I expected. It's what they should do. Anytime they face a bad team, it should have happened at Denver, but I guess I'll give them the excuse. Denver is a tough place to play, especially in September. It should have happened at Chicago. The monsoon came in the way, but to go on the road, they stomped them. They should have done that. They're obviously an exceptionally talented team, and they did exactly what they needed to do.
Tevin Coleman returned. Tevin Coleman played incredible. And then they released Marlon Mack just yesterday. So they're going forward right now, waiting for Elijah Mitchell to return with Tevin Coleman and Jeff Wilson Jr. What do you think of the 49er combo at this point?
I don't know how I feel about it, to be honest. I'm not like the biggest Tevin Coleman fan as a runner. To me, he wears over the course of the season because he has poor vision and he runs so upright. He'll be very explosive, which is the redeeming trait of Tevin Coleman as a runner. If you say one thing that makes Tevin Coleman a starting running back, it's the explosiveness and the speed. And I think that wears over a season because I've never seen a running back get into more collisions throughout a game than Tevin Coleman because he runs so upright. So many guys get free shots on him. It's kind of the antithesis of Frank Gore, who it felt like nobody could ever hit. And so he wears over a season. He's obviously playing really well. I think the things that Tevin Coleman does really well are actually outside of a runner. He never makes mistakes in terms of his assignments. He is maybe the best pass protection back that Shanahan has ever had in this offense. Can't think of a better one. He's very assignment sound. He's a good receiver. He can run routes at times like a receiver. He's, in fact, very high-cut guy, which is usually the build of a receiver. You don't usually see running backs with the legs and hips and lower body of Tevin Coleman. But either way, I'm not, exceptionally enthused by it, if that makes sense. But I think given where they are, it's a quality player to have. And then Wilson has surprised me a little bit. I always knew Wilson was a good runner. I always knew he was a good player, but there's a little bit of juice to Jeff Wilson that we've seen this year that I'm not sure I've ever seen. We saw it at home against the Rams, that long touchdown run where he looked shot out of a cannon. We saw some of that juice on the first drive, that big run he had against Carolina. So I've been impressed with Jeff Wilson, and I'm kind of not skeptical of Tevin Coleman, but I'm not ready to change my personal opinion on Tevin Coleman based on one excellent performance versus Carolina, if that makes sense.
I hear you. I hear you. I will say this. Just getting in the locker room, getting a chance to talk to both these guys,
Mm-hmm.
there's kind of a badass factor about both those guys. I mean, toughness, I think, is the most underrated trait for running backs. You got to be super tough. I mean, you have the ball, and all 11 guys on the other side's job is to hit you as hard as possible. And they do. And you're not protected like a quarterback, and you're taking hits from all angles. The one thing about Coleman is just he's tough and he's smart and he's healthy.
Yeah,
I think that's the other thing. He's healthy right now.
My bad.
No.
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
But I agree with you. The way he runs, I'm skeptical that the explosion he showed at Carolina, whether it'll be there 2 weeks from now, if you give him 5 carries against Atlanta, and then you give him 5 carries against Kansas City, and it's because of how upright he runs. That the lower body, he's a very, again, like I said, high cut guy, so he doesn't have the usual like massive thighs and calves and hips that running backs usually have, like Saquads Barkley. And so because of that, I think that he has a tendency to wear. And when he doesn't have that explosion as a runner, it just becomes hard for him. I agree with you on the toughness. He's a battering ram. He'll run through contact. He'll play through anything. He is tough as nails. He's willing to put his body on the line in pass protection. And I do want to add to that because I just think toughness as a running back trait in general, like you mentioned, is undervalued. There's a really cool story that Ryan Clark told on ESPN like a few years ago. I don't remember the exact context, but he was talking about Mike Tomlin and he was talking about running backs. And he said before, I think the 2015 draft, he was talking about Le'Veon Bell versus another running back. And I forgot who he was talking about. I remembered and then I forgot. But either way, that other running back was more highly touted than Le'Veon Bell. And Ryan Clark said that Mike Tomlin said the other running back wouldn't work in the NFL, even though he was highly touted. I think he ended up being a first-round pick and got picked ahead of Le'Veon Bell because the difference between the two players is that Le'Veon Bell delivers contact and the other player just simply receives contact. And that's such a big difference as a running back. And I would say the one thing you can say about every running back that Kyle Shanahan has had in San Francisco, big or small, there's one trait that I think is consistent with all of them. They all deliver contact, whether it was Breida, whether it's even the smallest of small, JaMychal Hasty, they are willing to run through people.
Yeah, no question. And then certain game, like the Ram game last year, I mean, it was a run through you kind of a game. And when I look at this Falcons team, I think they're going to try to do that to the 49er defense this week. I think, you look at Huntley and you look at Algier, those are not run around you guys. Those are run through you guys. Yeah. And they've got a pretty good offensive line with 3 number 1 picks on it. And I expect Atlanta to come out and try to establish that run, even without Cordero Patterson. Right. They don't have Pitts either. But before we talk about the Falcons, let's talk more about this last game. What do you think of there's no Trent Williams. Jalen Moore on that long Jeff Wilson run caved in the whole defensive right side of the Rams defense. And Banks, I love Banks' pushing of Coleman, or was it Wilson, into the end zone. I'm loving what I'm seeing out of Banks. Burford at times looked really bad against Aaron Donald, but who doesn't? The Banks-Burford combo at guard I really like, and I kind of liked what I saw out of Jalen Moore at times. Burns beat him one time just clean right out of his stance, didn't even move his feet. But give me your thoughts on the Niner O-line.
I think so. With the healthy Trent Williams, I think it's in the top half of the league. And I remember we talked about this. I think it was on your show. I mentioned that I think that it's not going to be a problem during the season. And I think people are going to be surprised when the game planning element and Shanahan and how he creates things gets into it. The offensive line is going to look better. I understand that, for whatever reason, PFF just despises Aaron Banks. I think he's actually had a really promising season so far. He's tenacious in the run game. He's really physical. He finishes blocks. I think he gives the Niners a toughness and an identity where he's got a little old school mauler to him. I don't know if that style of offensive lineman that the Niners have really had under Shanahan, Jim Harbaugh had 5 of these guys. Alex Boone was this, Mike Upati was this, Anthony Davis was this. It's just, I'm bigger and tougher than you, and I'm going to push you till the whistle. And you're going to get pissed off because I'm bigger and tougher than you. That's kind of, there's a quality like that to Aaron Banks that I think is really good. I think he's played well. I think that in any sort of situation where you're playing so many young players, right, Larry, you're going to have up and down reps. It happens. Coach Johnston, one of my friends, I don't know if you know him on Twitter, but he does a really good job. And he tweets this out. He's tweeted this out a couple of times, and I think it's really true. It's that, the patience that people preach about Trey Lance and giving Trey Lance, they don't want to afford that patience for any other player developing in any other position. They want immediately, it's binary, good or bad, right? And that's often not the case. And I think we're seeing growth with this Niners offensive line. We're seeing players get better each week, each practice, each day, each game. And I think that that's what's really promising. And I'm kind of with you on Jalen Moore, but I think he more or less really played fine, given especially how bad it was when he came in against Denver for those 10 snaps. Like, that was scary. He was steady against burned. Right. And then he was steady against Los Angeles, filling in for McKivitz, and he was once again steady. I think if he can be steady, that's good enough, because once Trent Williams comes back, McGlinchey has played quite well. The only guy I really have a question mark on in this offensive line, and I don't understand the Burford-Brunskill rotation, because to me, Brendel has actually been the worst player of the 5, not Burford. But
Brendel, to me, Burford there was a couple plays in the Ram game. Burford, on that one that Aaron Donald had the free run, he combo blocked Brendel's guy. When
number 99 is lined up on top of him. That's
right. And he gave Donald a free run, and Jimmy had to just throw it into the ground. Then there was another one where he got beat by Donald by just quickness out of his stance. But I mean, that's just going to happen. I love, though, the power of Burford, the intelligence of Burford, the aggressiveness of Burford. I think Burford and Banks are going to be their guards for the next decade. I think those two guys are really, really impressive to me. The rest of the line, obviously Trent's elite. As far as Jalen Moore, the health of McGlinchey is always a concern. Can Brendel hold up? I think Zakelj, if you told me that Zakelj wound up being the starting center later this year, I would not be surprised by that. I think he's bigger, more powerful, can give you more pop in the run game. So it'll be interesting to see how the O-line develops. What do you think of Garoppolo? Because I think in this game, the last couple games, Shanahan's done two good things. He's gotten Garoppolo into a rhythm, which he was sorely lacking in Denver. And not only that, I think they've got their recipe for how they're going to win games, Vish, which is don't turn it over and lean on this killer D.
It's been the recipe, right? I think they're 19-2 in the Jimmy Garoppolo era when he doesn't turn it over. Although I'm skeptical, I'll actually give you the right stats. Someone sent it to me this morning. I'm not even sure if it's 9-2 to be 19-2 to be honest, because I can't remember 21 games where Jimmy Garoppolo did not turn the football over.
Right.
But it's 18-2 since 2019 when he doesn't throw a pick. But so it's always been that formula.
He could have a fumble, but he doesn't.
Right, he could have a fumble.
Yeah.
It's always been that formula with Garoppolo. I thought he played okay versus the Rams. I thought it was a real positive bounce back given how bad Denver was, though. And then I thought he was excellent versus Carolina, especially by his standards. Carolina, here's some of the things that I thought was underrated about his performance against Carolina, right? Carolina brings a lot of pressure. They went zero coverage a few times. Twice against zero coverage, he did a real good job standing tall and tough, which he always does. But then also, he didn't go hot either time. The hot read on the play wasn't really available, and he was able to get backside and throw a really great ball on 2 one-on-ones. One, Tevin Coleman made a great catch. One, Brandon Ayuk dropped. But it was 2 great plays, 2 plays we're not accustomed to seeing. And I thought throughout the game, whatever you want to say about Garoppolo, he's always, or whatever you want to say about Carolina's defense, schematically, they bring a lot of pressure, and Phil Snow brings pressure in a lot of different ways. So really with Garoppolo in this game, he had to have his answers versus pressure when it comes, where it's coming from, and know where to go with the ball. And it's something that I've gotten frustrated with watching him where, you're a guy 6 years in an offense. You should have seen that your offense, a lot of these plays, you should have run these plays against looks. You should be comfortable with what defenses are going to try to do against your offense. And oftentimes he feels oblivious to it. I thought there was a real maturity to his play in the sense that when his back foot hit the ground, it felt like he understood where the defense was coming from, who was coming, and immediately where he needed to go with the ball, which is not something I feel like I've been able to say. And then right now, this is the last 2 weeks, he's throwing the ball pretty great. He's hitting the bullseye a lot. He's making some really, really great throws, like throws where he's throwing people open with anticipation over the middle. He's throwing into tight windows. So he's playing really well, and he's dealing with people around him. The only reason I'm a little skeptical is because I think the volatility, and I use the word volatility with Garoppolo's play, he's kind of consistent game to game in terms of what you get, but play to play within games, he's kind of inconsistent, right? 3rd and 9, you get a free rusher on him. He'll stand in with 2 guys around him and flick a ball, just all arm out into a tight window and rip it and convert a first down. But then, 1st and 10, you got this play action, schemed up shot play, and the guy's wide open. He might miss it or he might make a dumb decision. So he's kind of like all over the place in terms of like whether he's this mature veteran quarterback or he isn't. But Larry, what's really got me worried about this game is in Jimmy Garoppolo's career as a 49er, here's a statistic for you, okay? He has, in games where he has finished the first game and he's also finished the second game, which means back-to-back games, prior to these last 2 weeks against Carolina and the Rams, he had only had a game where he did not throw an interception in back-to-back games twice. Now, he did it 4 times, but the other 4 times, one game was against the Jets, which he only played the first half, the second game in 2020, and he got hurt. And then the other game was, of course, after the Detroit debacle that they somehow won thanks to the pass interference call in 2018 against Kendrick Bourne, or not against the Lions on Kendrick Bourne, which then allowed the Niners to, save that game, which at one point it looked like they were going to blow. And he then got hurt the next week against Kansas City. So even though he threw a pick, I didn't really count it. So that means only 3 times in his career is he not throwing a pick in back-to-back games. He has never gone 3 games in a row without throwing an interception. I don't say this to say he isn't playing well and that the Niners shouldn't be, feeling very good about where they are. I just need to see a little bit more before I get real excited, because right now I am excited with how he's playing. But I just have a past with him, and I need to see something beyond this and a level of consistency to change really how I look at him.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say it's luck, but I mean, let's be honest. He will put the 50-50 ball out there and trust his guys. Mm-hmm. And if his guys come up big for him, like Tevin did down the field, then it's going to look like a great completion. And there's going to be other times that guy's going to slip down. It's going to be an easy pick.
Right.
Well, but to me, I'd rather have Jimmy in rhythm, operating, the way he's operated the last couple of games, as opposed to and getting rid of the ball quick, 2.5 seconds in that range, as opposed to hold the ball late in the down, float something across the middle in a crowd. I've seen that movie. You know what I mean? It doesn't end well. So I like the rhythm he's in right now. He's got a full complement of weapons. I think he's showing more patience to, throw it away if you need to throw it away. I don't think Atlanta can really rush him. I'm looking at Atlanta's, defense. Tayshaun Graham and Grady Jarrett are definitely, they got the interior's going to have their hands full with those 2 guys this week. But then the edge pressure. I mean, Ebiketie from Penn State.
I was going to say Ebiketie's played pretty well for them.
Yeah, I like him. I like D'Angelo Malone out of Western Kentucky. Lorenzo Carter. I mean, the former Georgia Bulldog. I mean, they got some guys, but it's not Brian Burns. It's not Marquise Haynes. It's not to that level.
No, Larry, but number 97 is a much better player than anybody Carolina had in their front. And
Grady Jarrett,
I think the difference is Grady Jarrett can single-handedly wreck this game. We saw
him do Derek that. Brown's as good as Grady Jarrett?
No. Maybe in the run game, I think, but in the pass game, I think the explosion, the tenacity. Grady Jarrett's a different animal. Larry, we saw this. We saw this movie. Grady Jarrett, to me, was the biggest reason why the Falcons came into Levi's and won in 2019. He dominated that game.
Yeah, and Julio made that huge play.
Right. Julio, Matt Ryan, too. But
yeah, No, you're right. I mean, Grady Jarrett's really an underrated. He's a badass. I mean, he is. He's fast. He's tenacious. He plays with low pad level, tremendous power. He can rush you. He can stunt you. He can bull rush you. He can speed rush you. Yeah, no, he's impressive. And there's some good DBs on the back end here. AJ Terrell was a first round pick.
He's
Richie
a hell of a
Grant.
player.
I love Richie Grant, the strong safety. He was a second round pick.
He's played well too.
Yeah, so I mean, they have some talent back there, but I just look at Atlanta going, okay, if they had Kyle Pitts, if they had a Cordero Patterson offensively, I think there would be more intriguing. They don't have a speed back. They don't have a speed receiver that scares you. So that was one of the things I wanted to get your thoughts on. There is no Emmanuel Mosley. He was playing at a Pro Bowl caliber level.
Yeah.
Charvarius Ward has been phenomenal. Fish opposite him. Who would you like to see step in this game and just going forward? There's a number of options that they can go with, both on the roster and on the practice squad.
Yeah, so this game, I think they should stick with the trio that finished the game. In Demo Lenore, Womack, and of course Mooney Ward.
Yeah,
I do think one thing that was interesting is that they actually did move Demo Lenore outside and had Womack come in and fill in the slot. I thought maybe Womack was a little more naturally suited to playing on the outside just because of his frame. And, you know, the one requirement to me to play corner on the outside in the NFL, I think if you listen to any NFL coach, any NFL personnel person, they'll tell you, you have to have speed. You cannot be a guy that the top receivers in the NFL can just run by. Because if you are, there's no way you're playing corner in the NFL. You have to be able to protect yourself from anybody beating you vertically first. And then there's so much into it with everything else. But you have to be able to stop a go ball. And I just like Womack's potential maybe a little bit more on the outside. I think he's maybe got a little more physical juice to him than Lenore, though Lenore has played very, very well over the last few weeks. He's played very aggressive, improved. Very clean. He's played awesome. So I don't want to sound like I'm down on him in any type of way. So I think they will go with that trio. But if you're looking for that ultimate replacement, they got to hope that Jason Verrett ACL comes back and Jason Verrett is Jason Verrett, because I think that a corner trio of Mooney Ward, Demo Lenore, and Sam Womack, while I think it can play well, I do think the Niners kind of go back into the playoffs with a similar position, with kind of a similar spot at corner, except for the fact that I would probably say that, Womack is maybe a little better in man coverage, or better in man coverage than K'Wan Williams was, and certainly not the player against the run and in zone that K'Wan Williams was at this point. He might get there eventually. He's got a good chance. He's just a rookie. It happens. And then Lenore is, I think, probably much better than where Ambry Thomas was last year, but he's not Emmanuel Mosley or Jason Verrett as good as he's playing. And so ultimately, I do think that replacement has to be Jason Verrett. I think it will be Jason Verrett. I was kind of on the Larry. This was my view of Jason Verrett before Emmanuel Mosley got hurt. I thought he was the ultimate world's greatest insurance policy. You have him practice. You don't really have to bring him off your IR. There's no expectations yet. He doesn't play special teams, and so there's no reason to activate him and all of that when your starting defense is kind of set. But he's the perfect insurance policy if someone goes down. And if no one goes down, then he just takes this season to get really healthy this offseason. If Emmanuel Mosley, which I still think remains likely that he's going to sign a big contract somewhere else, you then just re-sign Jason Verrett, who didn't play but rehabbed. You sign him to another one-year deal, and now he's your starting corner on the other side of Mooney Ward. So that's kind of my opinion of Verrett before this injury. Now I think that injury has kind of forced the timeline on the Niners a little bit, but that's who I would say.
I think Verrett is like an all-pro, Pro Bowl caliber player when healthy, even despite the injuries. The footwork, incredible. The intelligence, off the charts. The stop and start. I mean, he's got everything I'm looking for in a corner except for real size and obviously durability. But when he's ready to roll, I got total confidence, and I think they'll go with him. But then the question is, how long will he last? I mean, that's the ultimate question. So you don't want to burn through your kind of reserves of corners. And then you got Dante Johnson sitting there on the practice squad, who everybody knows is very dependable. And And I know if the Niners make the playoffs, they're going to be leaning on Dante Johnson. You know what I mean?
Because I'm a big fan personally, so yeah,
I am too. I am too. He's smart. He's tough. He's one of the guys I really like talking to. Brandon Vincent says, love this collab. Also, side note, Larry, just want to compliment your interviewing skills. You make it so seamless and fluid going from topic to topic. Brandon, that's why I put that comment up right there. Because you're sucking up to the host. No, I appreciate it, bro. I really do appreciate it. And Vish is the man. We always love talking ball with Vish, and we can do it for hours, but we only have a few more minutes.
We got about 10 minutes. 10,
okay, we got one in here for I think it's really interesting. From Avtar Singh was asking earlier about the D line. He's basically saying that this is going to be an entire backup D line game. I would not play Bosa. Here it is. He says, we might have all backups on the defensive line in this game. He says it might be Charles Menahue, Kevin Givens, Hassan Ridgeway, and Kerry Hyder. Oh, don't forget Drake Jackson. I'll say this. I'm fine with all those guys. Let's just talk about those guys right on the screen. Menahue, talked to him last week. He's played awesome. At 275. He's now down under 265. He's faster and leaner and meaner than he's ever been. So he looks great, and he loves playing at that weight. Givens also is absolutely an incredible player. Now, he's not great against the run. He's more of a gap penetrator, pass rusher. Like, if you were trying to stop the run, you might not put him in there. But
I don't know if I would say that as much, Larry.
He's been good this year against the run, but he's more of a penetrator.
I think if they played like the Seattle front like they used to, or where Grady Jarrett played when they played for Dan Quinn, and you put him as a 3 technique in that Seattle front right next to like a shade nose, and you just say, just get up the field and win one gap, like this could be the next like undersized, short, explosive defensive tackle that, it started with John Randall. Then I remember Geno Atkins when I was younger was this player. Aaron Donald's kind of all around, so he's not this version of this player. But then Grady Jarrett is, to me, the new age version of this kind of player, this short, like explosive, super low, built really low to the ground, and just gets under an underrated power. I think he could be that kind of player. I just think that the way they work their front now, there's a little bit of bias to having size the way Kinlaw and Armstead and Ridgeway do that he just doesn't naturally have. But he's been awesome. Menahue has been just phenomenal this year.
Yeah.
Ridgeway has also played well, and then Kerry Hyder's as steady as it gets.
Kerry Hyder's motor. Okay with this Kerry Hyder's motor, Vish. That's what amazes me is just Kerry Hyder just keeps going. Just keeps going. He never stops. He gets blocked. He's in the dirt. His face is in the dirt. He gets up, and he still sacks the quarterback. I mean, Kerry Hyder is like, I could see why Coach Eric wants this guy, because this guy gives you everything he's got. And that's all you can ask, right? Give me what you got. Kerry Hyder gives everything he's got.
Every player here does.
And you,
this defensive line,
you give us everything you got. But give me one on this. What's your biggest concern? Like, if we were, I didn't do the thing with Grant this week, but because the schedule didn't work out, but we'll hook up again next week. But I always love when I'm talking to Grant, because he'll have some concern that I hadn't even thought about. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, and then I'm thinking to myself, man, he'll go deep on the concerns.
He's the best. It's amazing. He has an uncanny ability to like read a situation, create like. Sometimes when he says it to me originally, I'm like, what are you talking about? And then he'll explain it to you, and you're like, well, that's valid. That's a valid line of thinking. And
seriously,
he's
what's the biggest concern in Ninerland? Either side of the ball. I'll give you one. I'm concerned that all this emphasis on special teams is not going to amount to much. Gold is hurt. They just gave the returner last week 2 huge returns. Gold had to make a tackle in both of them. They added all these guys in special teams. Ray McLeod may now be I get the sense that we're going to see some high-profile fumbles. That concerns me. And
he didn't look good catching the ball.
They switched the coordinator. They switched talent. They made an investment. It all looks like it's going to amount to the exact same thing. That's my primary concern.
No, I think, Larry, you're underrating. There's been a certain injury that's really affected the coverage the last 2 weeks. Because I think the special teams coordinator changing things was a little bit overrated. just because I saw a good special teams coordinator in Richard Hightower. There were moments like the 2017 special teams was very good, and then they kind of middle of the pack. But I think what became difficult is that the Niners used to get so injured that they would rotate a lot of guys, and they would sign a lot of guys, and they would immediately have to come in and play special teams. So there wasn't really a synchronization to the special teams because there were so many people in and out. But Tarvarius Moore being hurt has affected the coverage. Him and George Odom, to me, are like game-changing gunners. They get down the field so fast, they're aggressive, and they tackle really well. And I think without him, the special teams has been hurt a little bit. I don't think that it's a point for concern yet, but I'm with you. I do think that I'd be getting there soon just because, someone like Oren Burks has not played like a core elite special teamer yet. George Odom is a great special teams player, but all pro special teamer, when you have that kind of player on your special teams, you don't expect to be giving up big returns. So that's there. What I would say my biggest concern is
they have not hit a deep ball. Jason on the text says concern is Danny Gray, Jimmy G hookup. They it seemed like we were going to see Trey to Danny Gray quite a bit this year. And once Trey went down, is Danny Gray Jimmy?
I'm actually a little bit skeptical of that. I'm actually a little skeptical of that. Shanahan has never played a receiver and just put him on and played him meaningful snaps and called plays for him when even if you can run to play receiver in Shanahan's offense, you have to be comfortable playing all three positions. You have to show that you can he's kind of a traditionalist, if that makes sense in that way. Like he won't just keep a McCole Hardman on his roster the way Andy Reid does just to run a few gadget plays and maybe he gets better as a receiver. So I don't know if Danny Gray truly would have gotten many more opportunities with Trey Lance. I really don't know. I'm a little skeptical of it though. But if you ask me, even that, Larry, they find ways to generate explosive plays. So I'm not so worried about the deep ball. To me, it's can you create explosive plays? And right now they have the last 2 weeks in the run game. My concern is not a concern that's long-term as much. It's a concern about this moment. This front seven is beaten up.
This particular live stream?
Yes, exactly. This live stream today.
This exact moment?
Who
that
they're
comment
playing,
from Portola 45? I mean, are we talking about exactly this moment or just this week?
Yes, this week, this game. Yeah, Curtis Robinson is coming back. I was surprised he made the roster. In fact, he is a core special teamer. You're absolutely right. But it's the attrition in the front seven, Larry. 5 starters are injured. Azeez Al-Shaair, Samson Ebukam, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, and Javon Kinlaw. They are playing the number 3 rushing offense in the NFL. And I think a lot of people haven't really watched Atlanta this year. I thought one of the better tweets I saw today, Splash Cousin tweeted out, Jordan Elliott, follow him, make sure you do. He's really good.
We just had him on the other day. He's good.
Yeah. He tweeted out, and I felt that way watching Atlanta this year and then really, going back and watching a few of their games back on film and stuff to be prepared for this show and being able to talk about the Falcons. They're a very well-coached team on both sides. Arthur Smith really knows how to run the football. He knows how to create space in the run game. This might be the best run game scheme the Niners will go up against all season, especially when you add the fact that their entire run game is built around having the quarterback being a part of it, and they have that read principle as part of their entire run game. It's going to be a tough run game to go against because of how good Arthur Smith is. Then on defense, I don't love their talent, but I really like Dean Pease. He's a veteran. He knows how to call a game. He's creative. He knows how to give his guys opportunities. I think the Niners offense should have success, but I do think overall the reason Atlanta competes in all of these games throughout the season is they're very well coached. But to go on, why is the run game now a concern for me? Because the Niners are the number 1 run defense in the NFL. It's because of the guys they're missing, right? And you talked about it earlier. Atlanta's offensive line is the most underrated unit in all of football. It was a bad unit when these guys were rookies. Those 3 number 1 picks now, Lindstrom and McGarry, they've become good players now. Atlanta has a top 10 offensive line in the NFL. Nobody knows this. The Atlanta Falcons have a top 10 offensive line in the NFL. This is the first game that the 49ers are playing an opponent, and I think that the 49ers don't have the best offensive line on the field. I didn't feel that. I thought their line was better than Denver, better than Seattle. Maybe Seattle. I mean, I keep getting impressed every week by Albert Lewis and Lucas, and Charles Cross. So Seattle might end up being the best offensive line in this division, honestly, by week 17. Like they're getting better and better very fast. But Abraham Lucas, I called him Albert, excuse me.
Abraham Lucas and Cross.
Charles Cross.
Mississippi State kid who's incredible.
Right, but otherwise, I felt like the offensive line with the Niners has been better besides this Atlanta team. And really what makes me worried is the fact that you don't have depth. You're going on the road on the East Coast against a team that's very committed and has an identity running the football. Defensive lines can wear out. Is this a game that, you don't have depth, you're missing key guys? First of all, they're going to miss the size of Armstead and Kinlaw. We saw glimpses of that versus Carolina, and Carolina doesn't have a strong interior offensive line, and they don't have the creative run scheme that Atlanta does. But Christian McCaffrey had space, and he had success on key running downs. He had success running the football at times. They just weren't able to be committed to it because of the scoring situation. And so Atlanta has this identity. It's not that I think Atlanta is going to win, but I look at the matchup and the way Atlanta's committed to running the football, how close they've played every team they've played so far. And there's been some good teams they've played, how well coached they are on the road. It's not as easy a matchup, I think, for the Niners, especially when you tell me 4 guys on a defensive line are hurt, Larry. How many snaps are they going to play? What if Atlanta really gets a rhythm with the run game? If they do, then it changes how many snaps they play, how fresh these guys are. So that's where I'm maybe a little bit more concerned about the injuries on the defensive line than some others. Because to me, other than Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead, what makes this defensive line special is that Charles Omenihu would be starting for 29 other teams in the NFL. Samson Ebukam obviously is a starter, but he would probably be a more marquee name if he was playing for another team that didn't have Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead. Kevin Givens, he would be starting on 28 other teams in the NFL, and he's a very good player too. So it was the fact that, these guys can play 20% of snaps. You can always keep Bosa fresh. You can always keep Armstead fresh, and there's this great rotation of really good players. If you're cutting that depth in half, Larry, it changes the entire conversation. I know a lot of people aren't concerned. Personally, I am concerned about the attrition that's gone on with this defensive line.
Good, really good stuff. Kelch Chronicle says the Falcons lost 3 games by 11 total points. That's a perspective shaker. Krueg and Vish 916_49er. Let's finish on this one. 5 weeks in, give me the 49er player that you're most excited about. Give me the 49er player you're most disappointed in.
Yeah.
And I can go first if you want more time to.
Yeah, I would love for you to go first. I'd love to hear what you had to say on this.
I'll say the guy that I'm most excited about, and it's not just because I like the guy. Well, there's really 2 guys. It's Charles Omenihu, or it's Samson Ebukam and Drake Jackson. They met at the quarterback last week, and I think the sack went to Ebukam. I asked Drake about it. He's like, I don't care. It's all right. It's like, I'm just a rookie. I'm just happy to be here. But I just love the way Ebukam is so fast and explosive that we've already seen multiple offensive linemen just tackle him because it's like, oh, my God, I'm going to get the quarterback killed. I'll just tackle him and take the penalty. So they just tackle him. His dip move is his flexibility and strength and explosiveness at 250 is so impressive. This guy could almost get like even with the ground on his dip. Samson Ebukam is an athlete, is a crazy athlete. And then you mix in Jackson and his just natural pass rush ability and just explosiveness and an ability to contort. Man, they've got Bosa and they've got Armstead and Kinlaw. Those guys are all number 1 picks. But those 2 guys, Ebukam and Jackson, are just absolutely incredible to watch. Every time I watch those guys, I'm like, wow. The guy who I think is disappointing to me to date, I'm going to go with Brandon Ayuk. Ayuk has been in this offense.
I was going to say the same thing, actually, but go ahead.
There was a play this last game where he's on the wrong side of the formation. Jimmy had to get him to the other side of the formation. They were about to take a delay of game penalty. Shanahan saw this, called the timeout, and Garoppolo stared Ayuk down for like about a 7 count. He's just like looking at him. And it's like, we've seen that. That's
he called
okay.
Him too. He called him over. We heard it audibly on the game mic. He
really,
and he didn't. Didn't he tell him to get over? He said,
"Oh,
come.
no, yeah, no." I thought you meant after the play. Yeah, you're saying before the timeout. Yeah, but I mean, after the timeout, he's staring right at him. And this is a guy who's been in the offense for a long time. He's not a rookie. This isn't his first go around. He's got to lead, and to lead, you gotta do everything right as a receiver, and that means you got to break the huddle like the ball's coming your way, even when it's a run play. And you got to put your glove, you got to cinch up your gloves the same way that you would when it's a run play and it's not coming at you. And you got to be on the right side of the formation. And you cannot be costing your team timeouts because you're on the wrong side of the formation. And it's just the little things. And I love Ayuk. He's a huge talent, but there's more there. And I can understand the frustration now because it's like, this guy's got Pro Bowl caliber talent, but there's not consistency in his game, and you can see some of the things that you could point to and say unprofessional or not as prepared as he needs to be. So I love Ayuk, and he's done some great things, but he's got another level of commitment to get to. So I would say Ayuk would be my negative, even though I think he's been pretty good. Right. Jackson and Ebukam are my positives.
And so I'll start off because I'll segue. For me, my negative is also Ayuk. It's not necessarily negative, quote unquote. I know that I may be someone that's a little bit more down on Brandon Ayuk than the general population. I don't think that I'm more down. It's just that I see too much of the general population say, Brandon Ayuk would be an 1,800-yard receiver if he played in a different offense. Brandon Ayuk would be the best receiver in the NFL if he played with Aaron Rodgers. And I watch Ayuk's game, and I see a very talented player, like you said. The talent is immense. But I don't necessarily look at him and feel like he's that level of a dominant player as much. I feel like there's sometimes where you can lose him within the offense. I don't know if he has, the alpha personality that Debo has. And I don't mean to say that because that's always kind of like a chauvinistic comment. Alpha, what does that even mean? It's not like that. I just think that there's a feeling to Debo that in every big game, every big moment, Debo wants the ball. And maybe Ayuk is just naturally more of a reserved person compared to Debo. But I don't get that feeling from Ayuk. And then I feel like Ayuk's hype and a lot of his best plays feel a little bit like where it's Ayuk runs a really great route. He's kind of away from the ball. He's got a really, really nice opportunity on the backside. The concept's here. The quarterback is going elsewhere, and Ayuk beats the guy, in 5 steps. The quarterback's already released the ball, but Ayuk beats the guy. Somebody posted on Twitter. Everybody's like, Brandon Ayuk, Brandon Ayuk, Brandon Ayuk, Brandon Ayuk, best player ever, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes from a football standpoint, like I yes, he's athletically very gifted, but like I'm not overly impressed, I guess, by plays when there's not a production element as much as other people. And I just thought with the offseason he had, I thought there would be a little bit more of an emergence as a key contributor within this offense. It's not that he isn't a good player. He's very good. He's one of the best number 2 receivers in the NFL. He's one of the best, like, quote unquote, third options within an offense in the NFL. Like, he is very good. But when you're talking about a first round wide receiver that they traded up for in the greatest receiver draft ever, and you're talking about that, I don't know if I see that level of player. And I feel like every offseason, it's kind of been the same story with him, where everybody sees the gifts, everybody sees what he can be, everybody says he can be something, and we are yet to see it materialize consistently on the field. And I think that a lot of other people get blamed for it. And it's not to say Ayuk isn't good, right? Because we're talking about already a guy who's very good, who's going to get a second contract, maybe from the Niners. He's definitely getting one somewhere else in the NFL. He's produced his first 2 years. He's had 900 and 800 yards receiving. He's a very good player. But when you're trading up for a first-round receiver and all of that, I guess there was a little – and the offseason he had, I expected him to really explode. And I know the opportunities have been limited and the offense features Debo and all of those things I agree with. And those are all part of the problem. And of course, Garoppolo's not the greatest deep ball thrower, blah, 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 blah. But Garoppolo's also given him 2 shots to make back shoulder catches. He's not made them. Those are plays that, if you're an isolated X receiver, you're that guy, you're a 1,600-yard receiver. You throw a back shoulder ball against 0 coverage to Jamar Chase one-on-one, that's a back in the pocket touchdown 10 times out of 10.
And you have to get your hands on it every time. There was a couple of those back shoulders. He didn't get his hands on it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that badly thrown. There was one late in the game where he did not get his hands on it.
I don't even get when people say it's a bad throw, right? The corner's playing in phase. He's step for step with Brandon Ayuk. Unless you're Aaron Rodgers, you're not throwing the ball like perfectly trajectory where it's right over the corners, like left arm in phase and off the sideline and right in Brandon Ayuk's bread basket, excuse me. Most quarterbacks are and he creates space to the sideline. Most quarterbacks are going back shoulder. That sink hasn't been there. I don't know. I guess maybe my expectations were too high. I thought Brandon Ayuk was going to be, challenging, especially the way they talked about it in camp. I thought he would be, the guy. Third-year players on the 49ers always make a jump. It was Deebo Samuel last year. The year before was Fred Warner. The year before that, it was George Kittle, who kind of made a jump in his second year as well. And in fact, he was great as a rookie too. But the point is, they make that emergence, the league-wide, everybody knows that this guy is now a superstar. I thought this was going to be Ayuk's time where he might challenge Deebo. And you might say, well, Niners offense is no longer 1 Deebo, 2 Ayuk. It's 1A Deebo, 1B Ayuk. And how are you going to match up with them? Because you're going to put so much attention on Deebo. He runs his routes into a lot of really favorable looks. And I don't know. I think he's a very good player. But I'm starting to wonder.
Lost in this offense a little bit.
I'm starting to wonder, honestly, Larry, 3 years in, if he will always just be a tease for us. He's always going to be a really good player. He's always going to show signs where you think he might be a great player, but he's not a great player. And I hate to say that, but here we are in year 3, and it's been kind of the same story with Ayuk.
It's time to do it. We can talk about it. We can analyze it, but it's time to do it. He's got great build. He's got broad shoulders, really, really long arms. He's 6'1" and change. He's got the ability to play like a 6'4" receiver. That's how long his arms are. He's got big, strong hands. He can pluck the ball with his hands. He's got great body control. He's got enough strength to beat the jam. He's got enough quickness to separate with the ball in the air. He's tough. He doesn't, I'll say this about Ayuk. He doesn't run with a lot of, and neither does Deebo. Neither of these guys run those in cutters with any fear at all. And that's what makes them. And you could say the same damn thing about Jennings. But Ayuk, there's got to be one game where Shanahan goes to Ayuk and just says, you know what? We're going to you all day, all night. Be ready. And I'd like to see I want to see this guy have a 200-yard day because he's got that kind of talent.
My question is, Larry, with the way they call their offense and how good he looks at sometimes, I don't know if they trust him to be a guy that they can rely upon to go every snap and he's going to have a 250-yard receiving game.
I know.
The way they go to him, that's what I question. To be totally honest with you, especially when you see a lot of these big third down calls and stuff over the last 2 years. I mean, I think a lot of people would think that Ayuk is probably the most dangerous player versus man coverage because he's the most fluid athlete between him, Deebo, and Kittle. They go on a lot of these plays. They go to Deebo Samuel, and they figure out how to win, and they go to him, and they go to Kittle. And I don't know why it feels like he's so far off from this offense. And as talented as he is, that's the question I have. And then in regards to that trait that you pointed out, Larry, so I'm a Chris Sims fan, and I listen to his podcast. And I don't know about how a lot of people feel about him, but he's obviously great friends with Kyle Shanahan.
Right. Yeah.
And he's talked about that particular trait being something Shanahan especially values when he's scouting receivers, where you're running full speed over the middle of the field. You're fearless. You just keep going, and you run straight through the ball and pluck it with your hands, and you go full speed, and you're focused on running after the catch. And like you said, Jennings has it. Deebo has it. Ayuk has it. And yeah, I think it's
Jerry had it, Taylor had it. Yeah, the old Niner receivers all had that. Run through the ball, run with courage across the middle, on the slants, all the in cutters.
Michael Crabtree, Anquan Bolden.
Yes, I mean these guys all had it, except for Randy Moss in the Super Bowl. He didn't have it. For some reason, Randy Moss.
Are you thinking about the Ed Reed interception?
I was so disappointed in Randy Moss in that game because I love Randy Moss. And I was so excited when Randy Moss became a Niner. And the fact that he didn't really go full bore for a couple balls in the Super Bowl, that kind of bothered me. We'll let it go.
He's another athlete, though, to be not to go on a tangent. I've never understood. Sometimes I don't understand like the enamoration with talent. Like Randy Moss is one of the greatest players in NFL history.
No doubt.
But people are so happy.
I'll take him number 2.
Right. Rice. I'm taking Rice 1. But my point with Moss is people are so contented. It's almost as if people romanticize the fact that Randy Moss didn't try maybe as hard as he could always, or the fact that Randy Moss refused to be a dominant presence over the middle of the field. Like people romanticize it that he had such a great career without doing that. I don't necessarily romanticize it. It doesn't make Randy Moss better in my eyes, if that makes sense. He's still number 2 to Jerry Rice. I think some people might take a certain number 81 over him. Maybe you're one of those guys, Larry.
Some people would take Megatron over him, I guess. But to me, it's Rice and Moss and Owens in that order. Rice and Moss and Owens. But I mean, heck, there's so many great receivers over time. When I was a little kid, I loved John Stallworth for the Steelers and
Lynn Swann.
And then Megatron. I mean, what's bad to say about Megatron?
Larry, Marvin Harrison. The one thing I'll say is I want to rephrase that a little bit. For me, it's Rice, Moss, and Owens, if that makes sense. It's not Rice, comma, Moss and Owens.
Oh, it's definitely Rice.
Full stop, Moss and Owens.
Yeah, and anybody who tries to move Jerry out of there, stop. Just stop. Right? Come on. Everybody, no more even suggesting Jerry's not number 1. Jerry's number 1. That's it. I mean, come on. We can't even, and I've never seen anybody who really even approaches it. Though, who's number 1 today?
Yeah, who's number 1 today? To me, it's Ja'Marr Chase.
It's Ja'Marr Chase over Jefferson?
Yes.
Over DeAndre?
Yeah.
Over Tyreek?
Over Devontae, yeah.
Over Cooper
I don't know.
Cooper Kupp?
Here's the thing,
Cooper
Larry.
Kupp's pretty unstoppable.
I'm a little bit different. I understand how good all these players are. I think the one thing, I think Ja'Marr Chase's offense and how they use him kind of limits him. If they put him in the slot and put him in the backfield as much as they did Cooper Kupp, you can't tell me Ja'Marr Chase doesn't do those things. I think
Ja'Marr Chase carries himself like he's the best there is.
And I think there's something special to just lining up a guy outside and putting him as your X receiver. And the fact that he can run by every corner in the NFL, he's one of the best. I've never seen a guy with Ja'Marr Chase's physical profile be as dominant in terms of 50-50 catches. And it's like crazy for me to say because like I watched Ja'Marr Chase and I remember watching every play at LSU. On TV, it was so obvious how special he was. Then when you study him, I kind of overthought it. Like I was like, oh man, Ja'Marr Chase lost a few of these plays. Oh man, he's winning at the catch point, but like he's only 6 feet and his arms are only 30 inches. Is he going to win at the catch point in the NFL? And then he comes into the NFL and he's running by everybody and anybody. And he's still the most dominant player with the ball in the air. So it's an interesting conversation. But for me, he's the one guy that I look at and I say, if you're saying after the catch, it's him, Debo, Tyreek Hill. If you're saying speed, it's him and Tyreek Hill that are the most dangerous. If you're saying explosion, it's him, Debo, Tyreek Hill. If you're saying route running, it's probably Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Kupp, but Chase is no slouch either. He's somewhere, near the top of that conversation. He just checks every box, I think, to such an extent. And I think his game day competitiveness, it's a special little game day competitive. Maybe it's some of the fire that I would like to see Brandon Ayuk play with a little bit.
I believe in
more.
Chase. I'd have to say today I believe in Chase the most. All right, let's role play on the way out the door. The Carolina Panthers just fired their head coach, Matt Rule. There's reports today with the trade deadline coming up in, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that in the NFL, that the Panthers they only have like 3 picks or 4 picks in next year's draft, and they're shopping a bunch of their veterans, according to what I'm reading. If John Lynch called you right now and said, Vish, I've seen you on YouTube on the Krueg show, and you know what? I think you know a few things.
I mean, I'm sure he watches the Krueg show. I don't know if he watches me on the Krueg show, but I think John
believe me,
the
only time he ever tunes into the Krueg show is for the Vish segments. All right, and he calls and he says, Vish, you're the smartest Niner guy I've ever come across. Carolina's GM's on the other line. He's offering me any of these players. I can make it. I can go back in there and make a trade for any of these guys. Here's the list: Christian McCaffrey, Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, DJ Moore, Brian Burns, Derek Brown. That's a great defensive tackle, a great defensive end, a proven wide receiver, kind of an unproven wide receiver in Terrace Marshall, a speedy wide receiver in Robbie Anderson, and maybe the ultimate jack of all trades with McCaffrey. But you also get their contracts, and McCaffrey's got the biggest contract there is, and I think even DJ Moore might make a ton. What do you think? What do you say to Lynch?
DJ Moore,
who of those Carolina guys do you want to go after? Or do you say, you know what? No, John, stay with what you got. Keep your picks.
Okay. So
because they're at a point right now
to
go for it. They're in a go for it mode. They should be in a go for it mode. They're one of like 3 or 4 teams that I think can win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So, okay. I think this is a very complicated question, Larry. I think there's a lot of layers to it, right? Because first we have to talk about what makes sense from Carolina's perspective, right? Then what makes sense from the Niners' perspective.
Well, they just want picks.
Then what would you do, right? But like, for example, in this case, I don't think Brian Burns is a realistic get. But if you ask me, like, out of all those players, they could just get one. Yeah, hell yeah, it would be Brian Burns.
Would it be? Because you already have Bosa, Drake, Amenahue.
If I had Bosa and Brian Burns, I have the best edge rushing duo in the NFL for the next 10 years.
But I was thinking if you ask me, I'd say I'd like to have Derek Brown.
You would say so. I
think Derek Brown. You put Derek Brown on a line next to Bosa and Armstead and Ebukam. My God,
I like Derek Brown a lot.
You might have to trade Kinlaw to get him,
player.
But
I don't know. I thought this before the draft. I like Javon Kinlaw a little better than Derek Brown because I liked Javon Kinlaw's ceiling a little bit more than Derek Brown. But I mean, I was wrong about that at this point. We'll see how it goes. I'm still having
people in the chat agree with you, Vish. They're all saying Burns. Burns.
So
Burns and
what I would say, the thing I would say about Derek Brown, Larry, is that I don't know if this defense really needs to spend that much. They do a really good job of getting size and depth in the run game. I don't know if Brown is that special of an interior pass rusher that he moves the needle. And then what would you give up to get him? Here's the most interesting.
Which of those guys is the most interesting to you?
Okay, so there's 2 ways to look at it. What's the most realistic and what's the most interesting, right?
The most realistic is Terrace Marshall. You could probably get Terrace Marshall for a 6th.
Yes, and you can say a second-round talent. Niners have done this, right? Charles Amenahue, talented player, give up low asset, buy low, sell. They're going to sell.
I would go for Terrace Marshall. I think Terrace Marshall, I was saying before we went live, that the best receivers in football are Jefferson and Chase, and I think Terrace Marshall would be a terrific NFL receiver if he wasn't saddled to such crappy quarterback play.
Yeah, maybe.
He's not as fast as those guys, but he's got very sure hands.
He does have sure hands. He's a good route runner. Definitely not at the level that Justin Jefferson was coming out for sure. I liked him a lot before the draft, to be honest. I thought he was a first-round wide receiver. I'll say that. I mean, I've been proven very wrong on that, but, that's okay. I miss a lot. That's fine. Just about getting the process better and hopefully getting the next one right. But in regards to Terrace, I have this for you, right? We just finished talking about Brandon Ayuk for a long time. And I think we both agree on one thing, right? Ayuk's potential is great. And Ayuk is kind of in a weird spot because they have to make the decision on the 5th-year option this year. And then he's kind of in a spot where he's not necessarily next in line because there's some more expiring contracts in front of him. And there's also Nick Bosa, but he is a guy that's right on the cusp of making that second contract decision. And to me, if DJ Moore is truly available, and I don't know how the deal would work, but just from a pure logistical standpoint, do you ask yourself the question, will Brandon Ayuk's extension be more than the 3 years, $61 million that DJ Moore got from the Carolina Panthers a year ago? If you think his extension would be more, I would try to sell low on Ayuk and take DJ Moore's contract as is. But if you think because to me, from a potential standpoint, like I think Moore is already near the top 10 receivers in the NFL. In fact, I'd probably put him inside of there. I think the quarterback play this year is really hurting him.
He's been quiet this year, but you're blaming that on Baker.
Baker and McAdoo. The offense is horrible. It's horrible. They do nothing for him. And then from like a fit with Shanahan, DJ Moore is like got the Debo, Ayuk, run after catch, all of that. He's built a little closer to Debo than he is to Ayuk, but then maybe he's a little more fluid than Debo not fluid, but maybe a little cleaner mover in and out of his breaks than Debo. Not as good as Ayuk for sure, but then he's better run after the catch and maybe a little more just speed than Ayuk. To me, DJ Moore is 4.3, Ayuk is 4.4, 4.45, and he plays that way. So that's a question I would have to ask, Larry, is obviously the logistically doesn't work. The one that makes sense is Terrace Marshall. But if you ask that question to yourself, I think financially it allows you to get a player similar, maybe cheaper. Who knows, though? Ayuk's extension could be $12 million. It could also be 25. It's kind of up to him, really, on how his extension goes. Because, again, his potential is immense. It's just about how close to it he plays.
I'll say this, Vom Lynch, I'm keeping the GM was a Scott Fitter. I'm keeping him on the line, man, because you know what? I think the Niners are absolutely in their window. I think it's, Michael Irvin told Damon Bruce and I the other day on 95.7 The Game that it's Eagles, Niners, Cowboys in the NFC. That's down to that. I don't know that I would sell out Tampa and Green Bay that fast, but I do think the Niners are in a very short list of Super Bowl contenders that includes Buffalo, Kansas City, and probably one other team from the NFC.
To me, Buffalo and Kansas City are kind of sitting in a tier by themselves.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
agree.
Yeah,
Buffalo, Kansas City, and I'm worried. I wouldn't bet Philly on a long-term deal just because they're subjecting Hurts to way too many hits. He's taking 15 hits a game. He's not going to last. I think he's going to get hurt. And I think the 49ers are incredibly deep. So we'll see. The thing that can hurt the 49ers is injuries. If they keep losing one or two key guys every single week, by the time they get to week 15, they're not going to have the same kind of roster.
I don't got any wood on me. Larry, do you have any wood? Buy you, knock on it real quick. Why do you got to put that juju out there? Come on, Larry.
Knock on wood.
But
hey, man, go ahead. You want one?
No, you're
more
absolutely
comment.
right. You're absolutely right, Larry. I think that will be that will definitely be something to monitor moving forward. I think it's really fun because like Burns, right, McCaffrey, Moore, Derek Brown, these are all truly really great players.
Right.
And if they played on a different franchise, we'd be talking so different about them. And the fact that they all could be available is great, but just the Niners just don't really have a spot to acquire any of them as much as you would like to. Here's my biggest fear, Larry, and I tweeted this out. I tweeted this out. Here's my biggest fear. I'll kind of leave our show there. Just because you put this bad juju out, I'll add to the bad juju. My biggest fear is that, we're sitting here, we're talking about those four guys, trade deadline comes, the Rams are still going through their struggles because right now they look like a very non-talented football team, if we're being honest. The Rams are bottom 3 in the NFL in terms of point differential. They're at a minus 36 this season. That's
a bad O-line.
They can't protect the quarterback. They
can't run it.
They can't run it. The weapons are not good outside of Cooper Kupp. It's bad. And Stafford is starting to press, and he's compounding mistakes because he's pressing.
Yep.
So it's bad on bad. But the biggest fear is that the Rams defense goes and picks up Brian Burns right at the deadline, and all of a sudden they got their new Von Miller, and they give Brian Burns an extension, blah, blah. I don't know if he signed an extension, actually. Or they go get DJ Moore, somehow getting rid of Allen Robinson, getting DJ Moore and pairing him with Cooper Kupp, or they go get McCaffrey and it changes their run game. I'm putting that out there so that it doesn't happen. I'm trying to jinx the jinx. Yeah. But that's
Les
my
Snead,
bad.
Do not think about doing this, Les Snead.
No, I mean, dude, Les Snead's probably got Scott Fritter on the line, and he's like, dude, before you get fired, just give me these two guys. It's like the fantasy team that you know is going down, but your buddy, you're like your best buddy in the league is the guy owning the team. So like, yo, just sneak me this guy real quick. I got a chance to win the league. You don't, like, maybe Les Snead is doing one of those to Scott Fritter. I don't know what the relationship is.
That would be incredible. By the way, somebody says Burns is 24. Color TV says, too bad Juju's make one good. And Wanda Brown says, get McCaffrey. Man, we are having so much fun. Hey, Vish, we'll let you go, brother.
Too bad Juju's make one, then the Chiefs should go get another Juju. No,
yeah,
Juju's
exactly.
actually played well for them. I needed to give you that bad joke, Larry, so that you would kick me out of here for that joke.
Yep, Burns. People want Burns. All right, man. Hey, it's always great talking with you. We could do this for hours. We will in the future. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next week. We are going to hook up weekly, whether it be on this channel, your channel, both channels, either channel, rotating. We're going to do once a week for sure, at least. If we can do twice a week, that would be even better. Good luck with your YouTube channel. Tell people right now who are listening, if they want to check you out on your YouTube channel, where can they find it? What's it called?
Yeah, so I'm really excited to be doing this weekly thing with you. I always love talking football with you. I think we have great conversation. And someone in the chat gave us a name. I don't know if you saw that at the beginning of the show. I liked it, the 2K show, because you're Krueg, I'm Kumaran.
There we go, 2K. I thought that was pretty 2K. Sweet.
Yeah, I'm not that creative, so I could have never come up with something like that. So I thought that was fantastic.
Nice.
But you can find me on YouTube. Just search my name at Vish Kumaran, which is the same thing as my Twitter. It's on YouTube. Yeah, it's a process. I'm trying to get better stream by stream, but it's definitely not. I'm definitely not where I want to be in terms of how I'm delivering content yet.
Is that a goat? Randall Riley's got Vish equals. I'm not sure if that's a goat or a poodle. What is he making you there? That's an odd looking goat. I gotta make.
I'll take both of them. The poodle means I got that dog in me. I'm like Zach Wilson, and then the goat.
Wanda Brown says, "Thanks, guys. Yeah, seriously, a lot of fun, dude. Always great. Follow this guy on Twitter. Follow this guy on YouTube. Vish, enjoy Niners Falcons, dude. I'm so glad I had you on because you kind of painted the picture of a little bit more of a sobering picture on the matchup. And now when I'm looking at and I'm looking at this matchup, I'm going to show more respect for that Falcons offensive line because of the love that you gave them here. Because I think you're right. I think it's going to be a physical, hard-hitting game. I like the Niners to win. I think they'll cover the spread, but you know what? It's.
Can I ask you one question real quick?
Yeah.
Top to bottom, when you look at the talent of the roster, right? Niners did not play very good teams, by the way.
No.
Through 5 games, right? Just when you look at how the teams are playing, who's on their team, who's playing well. We didn't know about the Rams. I mean, I suspected they would take a step back, but I didn't expect this. By no means did I expect this, right? This is they're a tire fire right now. But when you go through that list, Atlanta might be the best team they've played.
Yeah. But if you look closely at Atlanta,
Denver's probably the best because the defense is the best.
Yeah, because of Surtain.
Yes.
I will say this though on Atlanta, I think they are really well coached, and they've got a lot of tough guys, and they've got an O-line that's kind of grown together. Mm-hmm. None of those guys, Drew Dahlman's been there now a while. McGarry's been there for a while. They've got 3 number ones. Matthews, yeah, these guys have been there for a while. It's a good coach. It's a good scheme. This game, if they had Pitts, if they had Cordero, I think this game is a coin flip kind of a game. I would make the Niners a slight favorite. Without those guys, I think D'Amico, what the Niners have right now is they're deep enough up front. The injuries haven't depleted them enough. They're playing very complex and well-coordinated games. And now D'Amico is introducing really creative blitz packages from all areas. Right. And it just gives the quarterback and the offensive line so much to look at that I think they overwhelm people, and that's why they got a couple pick sixes. This game's going to come down to penalties and turnovers.
Larry, what are you doing on Friday
manage
night
their penalties
or
and turnovers?
Saturday?
What's that?
What do you got going on Friday or Saturday?
Nothing major. I mean, I watch.
All right. Well, I'll text you then,
football.
because this conversation about the Falcons 49ers and this, it's way too good. I do have to go.
No problem.
Friday or Saturday, I'll text you. We'll set something up. Let's do a show together and let's talk this through.
Sounds good. We'll do it Friday or Saturday. All right, brother. Have a good one. We'll let you go.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Later, man. The great Vish Kumaran, and he is phenomenal. At all times. All right, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna play the spots. We're gonna come back. We're gonna roll through the chat. Give me that last question that I threw out to Vish. Give it to me as far as not. Well, you can give me one or the other. You can give me the Carolina Panther that you would want to trade for out of the group that we threw out, or you can give me the question I asked him right before that. Who 5 weeks in, your biggest positive as far as the 49ers? The biggest, the guy that you feel the best about, and the guy that you have the most disappointment in 5 weeks in. We'll play the spots right here. We'll come back. We'll clear the chat, and then we will call it a night on the Krueg Show. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Larry Krueger here for Telmetrics. Thanks to Casey Bateman and the good people at Telmetrics. If you're an occupational therapist, if you're an orthopedic surgeon, a chiropractor, a physical therapist of any kind, Telmetrics is designed for you to use in your practice and will greatly benefit your patients. Telmetrics uses computer vision and artificial intelligence and provides a platform for outpatient rehab therapy services, both in the clinical and the telehealth environments. So using Telmetrics can improve your patient's experience and much more. So for all your sports injury needs, or if you're a physical rehabilitation specialist of any kind, make sure you use telmetrics.co, Telmetrix.co. And thanks to Casey Bateman and all the good people at Telmetrics for being a proud sponsor of the Krueg. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Dan Coach Emilio. Dan is a buddy, and he is a phenomenal retirement planning specialist. And you can contact him today at securemoney.com or at his number, 925-628-9966. There's a lot of uncertainty in our world right now, and you want to make sure that your money is secure. That is the key. Danny's got 25 years of experience, born and raised right here in the Bay Area, and he can help you get an immediate 10% premium bonus on your principal retirement account. So give him a call, 925-628-9966. He'll make an appointment with you, and you can sit down. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of a deal. He'll consult with you and come up with a strategy to get you going to where you want to be. Once again, 925-628-9966, securemoney.com on the web. And thanks to Tony Casera and the good people at Casera's Italian Menswear. They are housing the Krueg Show t-shirts, and they're a proud sponsor of the show as well. The Krueg Show t-shirt, the Krueg Show podcast t-shirt is available there at their store in Dublin. Their address is 7372 San Ramon Road in Dublin, California. And go see Tony Casera and get yourself a Krueg Show t-shirt and support the show. And special thanks to our sponsor, New York Style Italian Sausage. That's right, NewYorkStyleSausage.com is their website. Phenomenal product, whether it's the breakfast sausage, the Italian mild, the Italian spicy, the chorizo. You cannot go wrong with New York Style Italian Sausage. Once again, NewYorkStyleSausage.com. Often imitated, never equaled.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression. you know, that life is good.
So New York style sausage was started over 70 years ago. We are the largest producer of fresh Italian sausage on the West Coast.
What makes our sausage in New York style is really the recipe came from back east, from New York, you know, from Connecticut.
If you look at all of our labels, there's maximum 4 or 5 ingredients, which we're really proud of.
There's no preservatives, no MSG, fresh in, fresh out.
The pork comes in fresh, goes out fresh. There's never any freezing throughout the process. We've always used fine quality cuts. We're never gonna deter from that. It's one of the reasons why our sausage is so good. I guarantee you put our sausage up against anybody else's from a flavor standpoint, no one will beat it, hands down.
And do yourself a favor and do me a favor. Go buy a package of the New York style Italian sausage. Guaranteed you will love it, guaranteed.
Yeah, you got the wink from Pasquale on the way back. By the way, just extended our contractual arrangement with New York Style Italian Sausage Company, so they are going to continue to be a Krueg Show sponsor into the future. So whether you're at whatever grocery store you're at, from Costco to Lenardi's to Safeway to you name it, Food for Less, they all have New York style Italian sausage. And pick it up. It's phenomenal stuff. Really, really good stuff. And thanks to Mike D'Ambrosio and Pasquale and all the good people at New York style Italian sausage for being proud sponsors of the Krueg Show. All right. Programming note. We were going to do another hit tomorrow with Vish. We're now moving that back to either Friday or Saturday, going into Niners Falcons. So we'll have a little Niners Falcons breakdown before another one with Vish before kickoff, which should be good. Really love talking ball with Vish. As you guys know, Vish is awesome, and that's why we're having him on a regular basis. Also, programming note, tomorrow, the reason we will not be sitting down with Vish again tomorrow is I'll be on 95.7 The Game in Afternoon Drive tomorrow with the great Damon Bruce. So check me out tomorrow from 3 until 6 o'clock inside the palatial studios of 95.7 The Game. And I believe we're going to have Patrick Baldwin Jr. and Ryan Rollins of the Warriors in studio. So check that out tomorrow at 3 o'clock. And when you're not listening to the Krueg Show, make sure you check out all my friends over there at 95.7 The Game. Bonte and Shasky, and of course, Steinmetz and Guru. Don't forget Damon and Rado. And check out me and Lo Neal doing 49er pregame 2 hours before every game. So I love working with Lo Neal too, by the way. I don't know if anybody's caught my pregame show on 95.7 The Game with Lo Neal, but Lo Neal knows his ball. 16-year vet, all-pro fullback. Just, he's a badass. I mean, I loved him when he was at Fresno State. The guy could do the complete splits. He became one of the most hammerhead fullbacks the league's ever seen. And I love talking ball with Lo Neal on Niners Sunday. So catch that on 95.7 The Game. All right, let's hit the chat for a few final comments before we bolt for the door for the evening to go watch a little whatever's on. All right, Color TV says, thanks, Larry. Love your takes. Thank you, Color. Dusty Gold said, how about Kyle Pitts? He's out with a hamstring, but add him with Kittle would be a plus for the offense. Yeah, I don't think Atlanta will be trading Kyle Pitts anytime soon. Brandon says, Pasquale just made us an offer we can't refuse. There you go. Val Ramos says, make some moves. Hopefully that's directed at Farhan. No, but hey, you know what? This might be directed at John Lynch. I'll say this. The Niners have as good a chance this year to win the Super Bowl as almost any year of the Shanahan-Lynch regime. If John Lynch decided that they needed one more piece to the puzzle, I think they're in their go-for-it mode. I think they're in their go-for-it window. Brandon Vincent says the biggest positive for the 49ers is the future of the offensive line. Banks, Brendel, Burford look good so far. Jalen Moore has had a trial by fire. Would have been stuck behind both Williams and McKivitz, now getting real reps. So I think Brandon's hitting on something there. There's a lot to like
about the 49ers offensive line, especially if they can get the ball out quick and, put less pressure on those guys. I love what I'm seeing from Aaron Banks. Aaron Banks is tenacious. He's aggressive. He's smart. He doesn't seem like he makes the same mistake twice. He'll bury you in the run game. He'll get to that second level and he'll find a linebacker in space and he'll pick him off. I love what I'm seeing out of Banks. I talked to Burford as well, and Burford is a tough young kid. That's a great prospect. He absolutely is. 2 years from now, he's going to be world's better. They're going to have to live with some of the inconsistency in his play and pass protection, but Spencer Burford is a smart, tough road grader of a right guard, and to get him out of University of Texas San Antonio, great pick. Absolutely great pick. He played tackle in college. They're playing him at guard. He's got versatility. He could be your future at right tackle as well if McGlinchey got hurt or they move guys around. Burford's got that kind of ability. But right now, he's perfectly set at right guard, and he looks great. 916_49er. Larry, get Tim Ryan on. MF really wants Tim Ryan as well. Tim Ryan is another guy I love talking ball with. We absolutely will get Tim Ryan on. Wanda Brown says Huff has been her impressive guy, no question. Kyle Shanahan is the one that in Wanda's estimation needs some improvement. Nishant Pandya says we don't need anyone from the Panthers. Keep the draft picks and move on. Okay. Fair enough. I hear you. But all those guys are ball players. Val Ramos says, great show, guys. So, yeah, always fun to chop it up with the great Vish Kumaran. All right, that does it for us. Thanks to all of you in the chat. Thanks to all the sponsors. Thanks to everybody who has supported the Krueg Show channel. Loving the channel. Loving it. Check me out tomorrow at 3 o'clock on 95.7 The Game. Until then, have a great night.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you won't get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, getting handled. I answer to no one, I don't need to hassle. Yeah. We ain't never fall back. Hold our ground where we at.